when you take an EQ and you turn it up in a frequency range, right, you're turning up that frequency always. Well, I don't always want that frequency to be louder on most sounds. I want it to be dynamic. So now we have dynamic EQs that do that, like a compressor with a threshold. Anytime I'm reducing, I'm like 99% of the time it's a dynamic reduction. Because what if you only want to control a peak at 400 hertz, right?
That's a big tip right there.
I don't want to take out the low mids when the piano player is playing up high, because that's going to add that lower harmonic thickness to pop through. But when it gets a little muddy in the low mids, when he's playing in the middle of the thing, in the keyboard, I want that to be controlled. So I don't just take out frequencies unless it's like a really weird overtone and like in a bad mic recording or something, then maybe I'll do like a sharp dip. That's really rare. But what I'm noticing about doing this with saturation tools is that it has that dynamic. So if I'm not compressing the vocal, as people that watch this regularly know, I don't compress vocals. As it hits that saturation in that upper mid, it's only energizing and hitting that more when it's dynamic and pushing into it. So that's why I think I tend to like this, because it glues it. So anyway, that's a little.
So you're basically figuring out how to get the same effect in reverse. When you're cutting, yes, and you're using a dynamic. So it's funny that you say that, because I've started doing that a lot more, and it may be influenced by these talks, but I don't know if you've ever talked about that before. But instead of
I don't think so.
EQing things out, I'm using a lot more dynamic EQ reduction, and I just use the Pro Q3. Do you have better tools than that?
I use that most of the time. If you want to get super geeky, the Ozone dynamic EQ is better only because, and I hope Pro Q4 will fix this or add this function, but you can control the attack and release like a compressor in the EQ. But Pro Q3 is more user-friendly and easier to use. So, and it has an auto threshold match that is really good. But if I really want to get specific and kind of low mid or low, say I'm fucking with an 808 and I want to reduce like 120 to 200 hertz, that's a really sensitive area. Like sometimes you want those notes to come through on upper harmonic, like octave. Instead of splitting it to different channels, I get lazy sometimes. I don't like to split 808 notes a lot. I'm just just lost my train of thought. Oh, so I'll go use like a faster attack on certain notes, on certain harmonic regions in that versus the Pro Q3. But I normally use the Pro Q3. It's a one size fits all in a lot of ways.
So I'm going to try to explain it because it'll help me understand it and maybe help other people too. Instead of just reducing on an EQ, because a lot of sounds are so dynamic, the piano is a great example, of vocals another great example. Somebody singing lower in the range than singing higher. Instead of reducing some boominess in their vocal, you find where that frequency range is and use a little dynamic EQ so that when they're singing higher, it's not going to be affected nearly as much. But when it's lower and a little boomy, it cuts it out. That's a really great tip. And so you've been finding this plugin Spectre for doing a version of harmonic saturation and density adding in the opposite direction, where when it hits it dynamically for a boost, you get a little extra density, but it's not overwhelming it.
Yeah.